To talk about it, Senator Bill Hagerty, Foreign Relations Committee, former ambassador to Japan. Senator, I mean, you tell me. And today's speech, we talked about it with Brett Baer, he didn't mention IRAN. How is that possible? How is that possible?
It's just shocking how the Biden administration has tiptoed around this. We all know the world's greatest sponsor of terror, that's Iran. Iran is at the very heart of this. They're behind this. We've allowed them to enrich themselves under the Biden administration. And Larry, you and I know how the sanctions were working under the Trump administration. We worked together to impose them. You remember how we got Japan to stop buying Iranian crude. We had Iran at a point where they were ready to bargain, but they waited till the outcome of the election. The Bidens came in, and here's what's happened. They've looked the other way on the sanctions. We've allowed them to increase their capital accounts by roughly $50 billion just in additional oil sales since they've come in. You recall earlier this year, the Biden administration signed off on Iraq, making a $10 billion payment to Iran. Then most recently, the $6 billion ransom payment. What we've done is put Iran in a position to do precisely what they have done. And the incentive here, I think, is very obvious as well. What we've seen is that Israel and Saudi Arabia were coming back to the table that President Trump set in terms of the Abraham Accords that we were at the precipice of getting done at the end of the last administration. You worked on that too, Larry. As the Iranians saw the Saudis and the Israelis coming back to the table, the last thing they want to see is prosperity and the freedom that goes along with it break out in the Middle East. I think that's the inspiration for this, to disrupt that entire process using their proxies, Hamas, to do it. And the fact that Joe Biden won't even mention it, speak to the cause of this, I think is absolutely shocking.
Senator Hagerty, do you think it's possible, after this whole invasion, barbaric invasion, do you think that the Bidens are still going to try to work with Iran to make a nuclear deal? I mean, they seem like they'll never give up. And by the by, as you may have heard, they don't want to talk about it today. Sullivan, NSC advisor Sullivan denied it. Kirby, the spoke, they don't want to talk about Iran. Biden wants to talk. You think they still were going to try to make a deal with Iran after this barbaric invasion?
Well, isn't it shocking, Larry, that the administration that wants to talk about the root causes can't seem to see what the root cause of this disruption in the Middle East is? The root cause is Iran. They're the destabilizing force, and the ability for this to happen goes right to the heart of what the Biden administration's foreign policy failures have been. I mean, it's the allowing Iran to enrich itself. It's the failure in Afghanistan that has put our weapons in the hands of Hamas. It's failure after failure from a foreign policy standpoint that has delivered this problem right here in the Middle East. And the fact that they won't look the cause in the eye is just shocking. I'll say one thing. Joe Biden did finally acknowledge Israel's right to defend itself. And as U.S. Senator, I'm going to hold this administration to that. It's a shame that it took them days to get to this point. You recall the first communiques out of the State Department were, from the Palestinian Affairs Office, asking for Israel not to retaliate. The Secretary of State having to take down his tweets, talking about a ceasefire, again, trying somehow to placate their far left. It's ridiculous. We should call it what it is. Iran's at the heart of this. They're trying to destabilize the Mideast because they are worried that we're in a position where Israel and Saudi Arabia might actually instigate economic policies that drive peace and prosperity.
Well, that's an important point. Those tweets subsequently deleted, but so what? That's the kind of advice they're giving Biden. I mean, it's the Secretary of State suggesting we got to have an immediate ceasefire. What? Really? Now, the other thing is, Senator Hagerty, all right, so Biden talks to Netanyahu, what did he say, 3 times today or 3 times in the last 2 days? That's great. He wouldn't talk to me, dissed him for over 2 years. Wouldn't bring him to the White House still hadn't been to the White House. They met at the UN. I mean, there's just a certain phoniness to this. I mean, the whole world is watching, and, kids are being beheaded, grannies are being murdered. So I understand that. It is a tragic, heartbreaking story in Israel, and Joe Biden is along with that. But I'm asking you, is there any fundamental policy change that might really help Israel, right? If you want to help Israel, you got to put the clamps on Iran, starve them, bankrupt them.
We need to snap back. The UN sanctions that were waived need to be snapped back, Larry. You know that's the right answer here. We need to get the $6 billion back that was most recently granted through a waiver from South Korea to Qatar. Stop the flow of funds right there. We need to come back and impose sanctions. We need to start imposing sanctions and enforcing the sanctions that exist on this illegal sale of petroleum products from Iran. That's how to make this sting. That's how to make it hurt. Iran is now selling drones to Russia. It's that drone technology, the same drone technology that's going to be utilized here in Israel. We've got to come at this from every angle. We've got to stop it. We can stop it. But we've got to get the United Nations to move in the right direction. We need to get our allies to move in the right direction. But the only way to do that is for the United States to demonstrate leadership itself.
Yes, sir. Senator Hagerty, terrific stuff.